But a scene that's been excelling in Street Fighter V. Maybe there's been some doubters. Maybe some of them are in this room, but they're here today to put on a show for the people, to show what they're made of. We're talking about the West Coast, and actually, it's one of the most storied regions in Street Fighter. Period.
Facts, bro.
Period. Definitely one of the founding fathers of the American FGC. And they've had a lot of history with Street Fighter and Street Fighter V's in general. But that said, I think we wanted to take a look back today and kind of look back at Street Fighter V in the West Coast from Season 1 to today to remember some of the best moments and best players that we've seen out of the season. I remember looking back and just remembering the trinity of the Ken players. Back in Season 1, the Julio Fuentes, Brent is cool, and Chris Tatarian, the Kens running up on the competition all Season 1. If you weren't really part of the scene back in 2016, if you saw any major event on the West Coast at that time, you had one of those 3 players in that top 8, and possibly all of them at every single major and grand finals. There was plenty of grand final appearances between them, and yeah, it was really funny because they're all training together, like grinding so much. Street Fighter V at that time.
That's so powerful, bro. That's culture. That's culture, man. Like, I really do think that the West Coast, they have like a super tight-knit community. And you brought up the fact that there was like a new fire lit behind some players at the beginning of Street Fighter V. And one of those players, you talk about Dreams of Capcom Cup Grand Finals and whatnot. One of those players actually did it. A legend, some of the best neutral in Street Fighter history, none other than Ricky Ortiz. She is fire, Brian. Straight up.
Of course.
Sometimes, if you got it, you got it. If you got it, you got it. I'm telling you what, you can't really play. People see that Stan Pierce with Chun-Li and all that, but they don't get it. You know what I'm saying? People like you that don't really, you just do dash punch and all that type of buffoonery.
I'm an Aura main.
People who go to, people who like you, who just pop V-trigger and let the stones come and do the little chicken feet stomp versus throw, all that stuff. You don't know nothing about that nooch, bro. But someone like Ricky Ortiz, the amount of pressure that it takes against all of these guerrilla players out there, just skipping over neutral and having nerve to complain. This is Season 1, mind you. We had a lot more just kind of EX. You know what I'm saying? EX.
Season 1 was an interesting time.
Yeah, bro. Urian's EX shoulder was like +2 on block, +1, or no, 0. It was 0. And crouch medium kick was +2. Like, she had to go through a whole lot that time. But I'm not going to act like Chun-Li was not prevalent at that time. Chun-Li was prevalent.
Very prevalent. Very prevalent. But yeah, Ricky Ortiz is definitely doing work. Got the Capcom Cup grand finals against Knuckle-Doo, and couldn't close it out, but definitely one of the strongest West Coast players of all time, really.
Yeah.
Another one back in the day, I got to shout out my guy, Pierre Rog, West Coast legend.
Shout out Ed Ward.
Oh, man. I was learning so much from him in Season 1 and Season 2, using the ball rack at that time. So Pierre Rog was definitely always inspiring me. I remember talking to him one time, and I was like, man, I'm still kind of young in the game, right? I'm learning the science behind Street Fighter, so I get the numbers game at this point, right? But I don't really get the psychology as well. And I was like, man, Pierre Rog, you use your plus frames to condition people to respect your overextensions and pressure them. And I was like, wow. And he's like, yeah, duh.
yeah. But at that time, it was
at that time, I'm like, if you're +2, all you can do is tick, throw, or frame trap. If you do anything with a gap, you're eating a mash 3-frame jab, and you can never overextend. And he's
as
like,
if it was guaranteed or something.
Right. He's like, no, you scare them, you get in their head, you scare them, you bully them. That's what you do with Rog. And I was like, oh, I don't have to play like a robot, right? So Pierre Rog was definitely lighting the way for all Rog players for a long time. So I want to give him a big shout out. And another guy that he was competing with in the West Coast for a long time, even prior to Street Fighter V and Street Fighter IV, Snake Eyes. Oh my goodness, Snake Eyes.
That Kage different, but I mean, of course, it's Kage crazy now, but at that time, that Geef, oh my gosh, bro, he went off, bro. His Zangief was so amazing, and I will never forget that amazing grand finals.
There was no V-shift back then. It was a different era of Street Fighter V. I mean, when he landed that SPD, you were going for a ride, and there was no getting off that ride.
When you talk about nerves, when you talk about handshaking and all that, talk about mentality, the deep part of the game. There is someone who stands above so many players. The Street Fighter League GOAT, Samurai. I kind of want to say XSK Samurai, man. Just to really give it the throwback. This the thing. If you're talking about all-time great Street Fighter V West Coast players, he has to be in the conversation easily. You know, and I think really the transition happened. We remember the Ryu on season 1 and all that, but he got to another level for some reason when it came to Street Fighter League. And since then, we've seen him better in CPTs and everything.
That Samurai X Factor is definitely very real, and he's definitely one for the history books for Street Fighter V in the West Coast for sure. I want to give a shout out to a few other players. So while we're on the topic, I guess we're going to talk about the West Coast Dalsum crew.
Yes.
Dank Diaz and Commander Jesse. I don't want to just group them together. They are each accomplished players on their own. Commander Jesse popping off early in season 1, that legendary double perfect over Mago. And I think it was ESL 2016, like a big major tournament for tons of cash. He goes out to New York and takes the win over Mago with Dalsum, who at the time people were not really considering to be a good character. It was not really like how it is now. It was different back then in 2016. Yeah. And then Dank, he's one of like the new school players who's come out from the WNF
You never know
crew.
He was new school by looking at his game, bro. You would never know.
He was one of the players. I always heard that he was the earliest to get there at WNF and one of the latest to leave. He was the person on that setup, labbing before the players showed up, grinding. And it shows in his gameplay. He's probably the most technical Dalsum I have ever seen, at least in the American scene by far.
Yeah.
He was one of the first originators of really mastering that V-Trigger 2 with Dalsum, you know, getting the fireball out and playing ping pong across the screen and controlling all the angles and everything. And that's a very technical thing to do and requires a lot of labbing and awareness, and Dank was the guy to do it. So two players who I think have made their mark for sure on the history of Street Fighter V in the West Coast. And that said, I think we're getting to the modern era. There's
we gotta show
a lot of strong players coming up in the West Coast right now.
The modern era, bro. You know, as much as it pains me to say it for the time being, I'm not a hater. I'm gonna be honest. If you're nice, you're nice. Chris CCH, that kid can play. Nephew, that is a bad man, and it's currently, we'll see if he gets dethroned, but it's currently easily the best player in the West Coast. Numbers just don't lie. We saw what he did last year. I want to make sure we bring up Filipino man, someone who's an OG in the scene, who I feel like is now kind of having a resurgence, you know, with that Rose.
Rose is in the game, you know.
And making little call-out videos. We talk about that type of stuff later on.
But Nephew and Chris, two of the strongest in the American scene, unquestionably, right? You
Yes.
At this point in the game, I think they're two of the best American representatives, bar none. You mentioned Nephew being dethroned possibly this weekend, but was he already dethroned after the season finals? That was a very dominant performance by Chris.
That's a good question.
I think it was a 5-1 win for Chris CCH over Nephew in the season finals. So,
but you know, it goes off of who you can beat, not just 1v1.
okay.
You know what I'm saying? Their case could be a little different though, because they were both pretty much beating everyone. So they were kind of beating everyone in their region already and just making it to each other. So I guess that's a bit different.
Right.
It comes down to head-to-head with them a lot of times, it seems like. So no, you're right. It's a possibility. It's a possibility, but it
definitely
is
a possibility. Yeah. But I mean, these are the players I feel like right now are like the hottest in the West Coast. There's definitely a lot of other super strong players. I mean, there's too many to name. This season, I feel like a lot of the players are more motivated and coming out and playing and putting on really strong performances. So if we forget your names, I'm sorry. You know you're at my heart. I know I'm going to have to play you in WNF online. And so if you're upset with me, just take me out in bracket and let me know how you think.